All right, welcome to Cultural Humility for Educators. Humility is a noun, but can it be an adjective as well as a verb? Humility means knowing, accepting, and being who we are while demonstrating modesty about our accomplishments, gifts, admitting mistakes, and valuing others for who they are and for their input. Greetings, educators. Welcome to Cultural Humility for Educators training session. We look forward to facilitating today's learning. Our training materials include the following. In order to create an engaging learning experience, we will be standing and sitting, sharing with partners, in small groups, and in whole group settings. Please be prepared to contribute to the discussion as well as to take notes and stamp your learning. Learning targets. When we learn, we earn, and we get. Educators open to cultural humility will be able to self-reflect and demonstrate the following questions. How does my identity impact and or influence my relationships, my personal relationships and professional relationships? What blind spots do I have concerning the culture of others? What does it mean to be culturally competent or proficient? Is this a benefit or barrier? What does it mean to have privilege? How does this impact my work, mindset, or humility? And what is cultural humility? How do I live it out loud? What's the lifestyle? Our community agreements. Be prepared, be present, and be focused. Listen to learn. Seek first to understand. Show respect. Speak your truth in love. The Vegas rule. What is said in the classroom stays in the classroom. Our class is a confidential safe space for honest conversations. I statement rule. Use I statements and speak from your own experiences and perspectives. Avoid you and we statements. Ideas, not people rule. Disagreement will happen in our class because personal attacks are not welcome. Let's focus on the ideas being discussed. Step up, step back rule. All of our opinions are important, so let's all share the stage. Be wary of dominating the conversation. And lastly, learning versus debating rule. Frame disagreements as discussions and not as arguments. Voice your perspectives instead of trying to persuade others. These are community agreements. Feel free to pause the video and to think about what are some community agreements you plan to have in your classroom in order to facilitate a safe and brave and respectful environment where we seek first to understand, we speak our truth in love, we're present, we're focused, and we're listening to learn. Now that we've discussed our community agreements, we'll move on to our opening. Read the following quotes and pick the vibe that you desire to live out loud and or will commit to demonstrating during this session on cultural humility for educators. Take some time to read them and pick the number that best represents your goal for your vibe. Number one says humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. Number two says, I define leader humility as a tendency to feel and display a deep regard for others' dignity. Number three, humility, a virtue that fosters empathy, respect, and openness to others, perspectives, and wisdom. Number four, willingness to stay teachable regardless of how much we already know. Number five, humble, a down to earth demeanor that prioritizes simplicity, sincerity, and authenticity. And number six, humility, willingness to learn from others, accept feedback, and admit your mistakes, weaknesses, and failures. So pick your vibe. We want you to write this down and document what you're committed to in this session on Cultural Humility for Educators. And we will come back and reflect to see how you're doing. DNA, Do Not Activator. Identity Soup Reflection. Read the slide and provide 2 minutes of self reflection time. If your identity was expressed in the form of soup, what would it taste like? List the name and the ingredients. Did you believe others would embrace your unique flavor? Why? Prepare to share. Now that you've had time to reflect about your identity soup, again, remind yourself, do you believe others would embrace your unique flavor? And if so, why or why not? Prepare to share. We're going to do a mix and meet. So find a new coworker and we're going to do a stand up, hand up, pair up. It requires you to stand up. Step 2, put your hands up in the air and then pair up with someone that is new or that you don't have the privilege of working with on a day-to-day basis. Step 4 says, once you have a pair partner, share your name and your identity soup type. Step 5, share if you believe people will like your identity soup recipe, why or why not. And step 6, thank your partner. And then put your hand up again and find a new partner and repeat the cycle. So now we'll start the timer and so that you can have time to share with someone else about your identity soup and why you believe that it would resonate with them or not. Agree or disagree? There's a quote by Oscar Wilde that says, be yourself. Everyone else is already taken. Stand up if you agree with this statement or sit down if you disagree. Don't let your struggle become your identity. Now, stand up if you agree with this or sit down if you disagree with this statement. Be prepared to share why. Why do you agree? Why do you disagree? Both of these statements and these quotes come and it's talking about being yourself, your authentic identity, everything that encompasses who you are really is a gift to the community. When we try to become like others, one, it puts us in a position to be inauthentic to who we are, and it really robs the community of having a unique or different perspective about certain things and topics. When it comes to the quote that says, don't let your struggle become your identity, again, if you're walking around and your identity now has become really the struggle, it's rooted in that, right? It can shape how you experience others and how people experience you. For example, if you're a scholar and the first thing people see is, I am paralyzed from the waist below and I utilize a wheelchair to get around, right? Is your identity your struggle? Are you a paralyzed person or are you a person that had an experience that resulted in you being paralyzed? And so this really robs us from that people first language. We don't want people to see your struggle. We want them to see you and to have an opportunity to connect with you as a person, which is why we utilize and believe in utilizing person first language. And so with that, we want you to keep these 2 quotes in mind as we go through the rest of our training and we're able to really unpack the importance of these thoughts and our thought processes and to assess, when it comes to humility, how can we operate in humility if we are challenged to first audit our identity and how we view identity. So with that being said, we're going to stretch our activity a little bit more. And look at this example of Layla Duncan. This is her identity soup. She took the time to personally reflect and to go deeper into understanding who she is so that she can understand how she shows up, why she shows up the way that she shows up, and where are there opportunities for her to be a little bit more humble. Now, when you look at soup and you look at a recipe, there's always a base. A base that could consist of different types of broth, right? And so for her, at her base, she says she's American. She identifies as black. She identifies as Jamaican. It's her ethnicity. She's female. She's heterosexual. When it comes to her ability, she's physically able, she's cognitively able, and she's socially emotionally able. So these are her abilities here. Early additions to her identity soup are her socioeconomic status is middle class. She grew up, her location and region is Kansas City, Missouri. She has a bachelor's degree. She grew up in a two-parent home with grandparents in her life and many cousins, so a big family. She's the oldest daughter. Some optional ingredients for her identity soup are music, dance, and sewing. She's Christian. She doesn't like organized religion, and so that's important to know. She's a dentist in her career field, and she's a part and a member of the independent political party. Secret ingredients, things that people may not necessarily see when it comes to her identity. She left Jamaica in elementary school, so a large portion of her life is spent in the United States. She was bullied because of her accent at a young age by scholars in the region that they moved to in Missouri. She's 45 years old, but she looks 25, and so perhaps that weighs on people taking her serious and maybe minimizing, not really recognizing the fullness of her years' experience. No children, no husband. She's an entrepreneur and not interested in dating. Okay. She donates toothbrushes to our network schools and provides dental education. Wow, this is a lot. And it's true. Who would see that she does these things? So these are the secret ingredients. These are optional ingredients. These are early additions. And this is the base of her soup. So when it comes to identity soup, it says combine base ingredients to create a broth and bring to a boil. Add early additions and simmer over low heat for over 18 to 25 years, adding optional and secret ingredients to taste. So when we think about our identity soup and we think about Layla Duncan here, we want to ask the questions, are the base ingredients crucial for her daily living? Why or why not? How do the early ingredients impact her present life? Why or why not? Are the optional ingredients things that impact her daily life? If so, how and why? And how do the secret ingredients impact her success professionally and or personally? And how? So once we review Layla's recipe, we want to think about what ingredients would be included in your own soup. So now, we're going to take about 5 minutes, set the timer for you to thoroughly write out your identity soup, just like Layla Duncan's. And so you will notice the ingredients when it comes to broth. We want you to journal and write down your nationality, race, ethnicity, your gender, sexuality, and your disability status. Early additions, so socioeconomic status, your geographic location that you reside in, your education, your family structure, hobbies, passion, religion, faiths, career, political beliefs. The secret ingredients include your personal experiences, changes to ingredients, any hidden identities that may not be observable to the natural eye, and misperceptions of ingredients. Meaning, how do people often misperceive you, right? What are people's perceptions, right? What are some things that people don't know about you? So take 5 minutes to write down your identity soup recipe. Be prepared to share 2 to 3 of the key ingredients and why. Pause the video for more time. Mix and meet a new coworker. So in order to share and discuss, we're going to have you to mix and meet a new coworker, different from the one you spoke to previously. And we're going to conduct a turn and talk that requires you to turn and to talk to a fellow coworker. You're going to share your name and 2 to 3 details of your identity soup with your new pair partner. Go ahead and start the timer. Now let's prepare. Now we'll have a group popcorn discussion. Now that you've had time to talk to one other pair partner and you share 2 to 3 ingredients in your identity soup. We now will utilize chart paper and a marker. We'll have one volunteer to scribe and write our thoughts out. And the entire staff, your role is to be prepared to provide a short response to the following questions on culture. Culture. What does it mean to be culturally competent or proficient? Go ahead and share your ideas and your definition of what that means. As you share, one classroom representative will jot down and record our responses. Now that we've completed and we've heard everyone's definition of culture and what it means to be culturally competent or proficient, we'll now move on and to unpack what it looks, feels, and sounds like. Step one, a person that is culturally competent or proficient, they audit their own identity and foundation, just as we had you do with your cultural, your identity suit. So first, it says reflect. A person who is culturally proficient and competent knows the value of auditing their own identity. They ask questions like, who am I? And how does my past and present, the big eight, impact my personal and professional work? What are the benefits? What are the barriers? You'll notice at the graphic here we have the big eight. These are all areas that we want to be aware of because sometimes they show up in the professional workspace as well as our personal life, and they can cause challenges when we're not so knowledgeable and are open to learning more about the following areas and how other people live their lives. Then, culture. What is culture? Culture is 10% of what you see and 90% of what you don't see. Here we have the cultural iceberg. These are the things that are typically visible: food, flags, festivals, fashion, holidays, music, performances, dancing, games, arts, crafts, literature, and language. These are the things that when studying someone else's culture, these become easier targets because they're visible. But then when we think about their deep rooted culture, you travel to somewhere like Brazil, Morocco, what are their communication styles and rules? Concepts of self and time and past and future. What are the notions of courtesy and manners? Do they eat with their hands? Do they eat with utensils? If you eat with your hands, do you have to wash your hands before meals? How are meals prepared? Are they communal or is it an individual plate that are made? So what are the notions of their practices and processes? What are the attitudes toward elders in Morocco, if that's, or Brazil? What are the approaches to religion or courtship or even marriage in these countries? So what are my cultural blind spots? Do we realize that we're very knowledgeable about certain cultural things concerning our own culture, but where are we culturally blind? And how may learning about our blind spots help us and positively impact our work? Step three in the cultural humility process is to take the cultural humility assessment. Identify which of the three areas you need to strengthen the most. Be prepared to share which needs the most work. Vote with your feet. Group poll. Stand up and select your answer. I need to sharpen my cultural knowledge, cultural awareness, or cultural skills. Based on your cultural humility assessment, which of the following areas needs the most work? Stand up and vote with your feet. Stand in front of A, B, or C to submit your vote. Thank you. Now let's go further into where our cultural humility work should begin. Cultural competence continuum, define. Label the cultural competence continuum. Utilize the word bank below and match the numbers with the correct answer. You have 60 seconds. Read the following statements and match it with the following letters below. Number 1, I see differences and erase them or seek to eliminate them. This can be described as forced assimilation. Number 2, I see differences and label them wrong. This can be also considered bias and stereotypes. Number 3, I see differences and acts/behaves as if I don't. Can also be considered differences ignored. Looking at number 1, stand in front of the letter that best describes your answer. I see differences and erase them. Stand in front of the letter A if that's your response. You're voting with your feet. The letter B for blindness, or C, destructiveness. Number 2, stand up and submit your vote. A, B, or C. And then number 3, vote with your feet. Submit your vote as A, B, or C. You chose the correct answer for number 1 if you described it as destructiveness. Number 2, incapacity. Number 3, blindness. To further define the following 3 terms, cultural destructiveness is as follows: seeking to eliminate the cultures of others in all aspects of the school and in relationship to the community served. It weaponizes a person's uniquenesses, and pretty much this is a process of saying that everyone should be alike. Number 2, cultural incapacity is defined as trivializing and stereotyping others' cultures, seeking to make the cultures of others appear to be wrong or inferior to the dominant culture. And lastly, cultural blindness, not noticing or acknowledging the cultures of others within the school community, treating everyone in the education system without recognizing the needs that require differentiated interactions. The equivalent of saying, well, I don't see color, or all lives matter, or we're just a melting pot. Yes, but there are uniquenesses that we do need to see. If a scholar has a food allergy, we wouldn't say, well, we're all the same, so go ahead and eat those peanuts. Or if a scholar has a visual challenges, we wouldn't say, you know what, it's not fair. Take those glasses off. It's not fair for you to be able to wear glasses in class and everyone else can't. We accommodate unique needs of others because it's what they need. And so cultural blindness, it puts a person in a position where if you don't see it, then you don't have to address it. But in reality, what you don't see, we can go back to our quote. Is it that you don't see it because you don't have to see it? Or is it don't see it, or is it that we're not seeing things because we don't want to see them? So we can definitely spend a lot of time in personal reflection about those following 3 terms. Let's continue. Cultural competence continuum, defined. We're going to label the cultural competence continuum. Utilize the word bank below and match the numbers with the correct letter. Number 4, I see differences sometimes. I see differences, but I sometimes respond inappropriately. I assess the needs of individuals. This is described as explores cultural issues. Number 5, I see differences, values, and adopt them. I seek advice from diverse groups. I seek unbiased individuals for partnerships. That means that I'm self-aware and I learn. Number 6, seeks differences, responds positively, esteems cultures, and advocates for equity and social justice, implements change to improve supports. So this is a person who's a change agent. Vote with your feet. Number 4, Submit your response, A, B, or C. Number 5, vote with your feet and stand in front of the correct column, A, B, or C. And number 6, vote with your feet. Is your response A, B, or C? Number 4 is pre-competence. Number 5 is considered competence. And number 6 is considered proficiency. Thank you. Complete cultural competence can never be fully attained. Rather, it is a lifelong process of learning, growing, and changing. Agree or disagree? Based on the following definitions, it can be a challenge to achieve cultural competence and proficiency. How can any one person master all areas of culture? How can any one person become an expert at all areas of culture worldwide, as culture is constantly evolving? Culture and diversity trivia. No devices or cell phone use. Let's test this theory. Perhaps it is possible. Let's put the quote to test. Let's showcase your knowledge, awareness, or skill sets regarding the following situations that require a national and international cross-cultural and diversity lens. Dangerous places in my school. Fill in the blank. According to the 2021 GLSCN National School Climate Survey, where and when is the most dangerous time, i.e., unsafe time, on a school campus for scholars who express and/or identify as a member of the LGBTQ plus community? Target 3 areas and be prepared to submit your response. You answer correctly if you wrote the following: the bathroom. 45% of scholars mention that the bathroom is the most dangerous time during the change of classes for scholars who identify and or are a member of the LGBTQ plus community. More bullying occurs during these times of the day because it's unsupervised by adults and the bathrooms are crowded with a tons of classmates. The second area is the locker room. 42% of scholars identify this as an unsafe space for them. And the third is the PE or gym class. 39% of scholars experience bullying in physical education and or PE class, according to this National School Climate Survey. Let's continue to test our cultural proficiency and or competence. Suppose your class or your school, we take a trip to West Yorkshire, England. If a scholar gets into trouble on the school trip in West Yorkshire, England, and they need legal help, which of the following should the scholar request? A, a lawyer. B, an advocate. C, a helper. D, a solicitor. Or E, a private investigator. Jot down your response. The answer is D, solicitor. In the UK, i.e., England, a solicitor is a qualified legal professional who provides specialist who provides special legal advice and represents clients, often acting as a first point of contact in legal matters. Just because individuals speak the same language, i.e., English, does not mean that there is a common knowledge, common understanding, and common demonstration or how we live our values and culture out loud. In the United States, a solicitor, we typically use this to describe individuals who are trying to sell something, right? We can often see those signs, no solicitation, on businesses who don't want individuals coming inside during business hours trying to sell products. Common language, but not common understanding when saying solicitor in the UK versus solicitor in the United States of America. Another cultural proficiency, moments. Black History Moment. Brad Lomax, a member of the Black Panther Party, was crucial in the disability rights movement, notably supporting the 1977 504 sit-ins, where his efforts included providing food, were instrumental in the success of the protest. How many days did the disabilities community how many days did the disabilities as a civil rights category protest that occupied a federal building last? So how long did this disabilities as a civil rights protest? How long did they occupy this federal building? How many days? You are correct if you, without using your cell phone, said 27 days, making it the longest occupation of a federal building at the time on April 5th, 1977 in San Francisco. You can watch the documentary Crip Camp, A Disability Revolution on Netflix if you want to learn more about the USA disability civil rights movement and how it came to be. Another knowledge check. What percentage of LGBTQ plus scholars reported hearing homophobic remarks, and what percentage heard negative gender expression remarks from their teachers or other staff members, according to the 2021 GLSCN National School Climate Survey? All right, let's check your responses. Again, we're looking for percentages. According to this National School Climate Survey, you were correct if you said the answers are 58% and 72%. Wow, those are high numbers. So 58% of LGBTQ plus scholars reported hearing homophobic remarks, and 72% heard negative gender expression remarks from their teachers and other staff members. And so this says a lot to us. Are these numbers a shock and or concerning to anyone? The 2024 survey comes out very soon, so let's hope that our scholars are not subjected to the misbehavior of educators responsible for keeping their school day safe and caring. Would someone who believes that they deserve it because of the lifestyle that they choose to lead, if an educator or an adult believes they deserve it, are they really going to protect them and to support a safe and caring environment for them? The only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing, by the great philosopher Socrates. And so, did you learn something new? Who among us has total knowledge, total awareness, and every skill that we need to be a great team member? We appreciate your teamwork, and hopefully there were some deep discussions that were mentioned based on just these 4 questions. Now we're going to prepare. We're going to have a group conversation about privilege. Group popcorn share out first. We're going to go back to our chart paper, a marker, ask a volunteer to be our scribe and our person who will write our responses. You will be asked to give a short definition of what is privilege. Are you privileged? What does it mean to have privilege? And how does privilege impact my work, mindset, and humility? So let's start with our definition. What does it mean to have privilege? Pause the video and respond to the following questions. Check for understanding. In order to define what is privilege, let's look at the following group as they go through an exercise and they're able to provide their own definition of what privilege is. Watch the video, track how you would respond to this privilege exercise. Be prepared to share your observations.
Some people are born into families where they have to walk miles just to get water. All I have to do is turn on a faucet. That's privilege.
If you have ever tried to change your speech, if you were embarrassed about your clothes or house, if you would never think twice about calling the police when trouble occurs.
I think privilege is when some people have some things and other people don't have things.
I feel privilege is something that you don't even really have control over.
I think it'd be silly for me to say I don't have a fair amount of privilege, considering like the country I live in and the job I get to do and the college I was allowed to go to.
I suppose being a white male will help me end up somewhere towards the front, but I'll take a few steps back from being gay.
I don't think I'll make it to the front. I think I'll maybe be in the middle. That's just the gut feeling I have.
If your parents work nights and weekends to support your family, take one step back. If you can show affection for your romantic partner in public without fear of ridicule or violence, take one step forward. If you were embarrassed about your clothes or house while growing up, take one step back. If you have ever been diagnosed as having a physical or mental illness or disability, take one step back. If you have ever been bullied or made fun of based on something you can't change, take one step back. If you get time off for your religious holidays, take one step forward. If you came from a supportive family environment, if you can see a doctor whenever you feel the need, if you are able to move through the world without fear of sexual assault, if you took out loans for your education, if there were more than 50 books in your house growing up. So these are your final positions.
I think it felt kind of strange for everyone.
It's a hard thing to discuss or even reflect on. It was very awkward.
I think when you can represent it so visually like this and so immediately, it definitely takes on a new form.
I think we were like all joking around in the beginning. It was pretty lighthearted, and as soon as the questions started coming in, the mood shifted immediately, and we all it was just silent.
Just looking back and seeing like a bunch of people behind you is not a good feeling.
It's like weird how you want to like hold on to explaining a certain privilege, like, oh, but that's not actually me because like I had to work really hard for that. So it's weird to like take a step forward when you feel like you're taking a step forward with someone else, but you wear a lot of the baggage of like how those things were hard.
It was like more emotional than I thought it would be.
It reminded me of when they talk about slavery in high school and you feel like angry for a few days, but then you just realize like, this is how it is.
For me, it was kind of frustrating almost to look back and see how much further some people were behind me, and realizing that, you know, a lot of that stuff, no amount of hard work or even legislation can make up that gap.
It's interesting being an Asian American because you're not really sure where you fall on the spectrum of privilege.
I know that for me, one of the reasons I ended up so far back was that there were questions around safety as an African American, as a woman, as a gay woman. There are just so many different ways that I don't feel safe.
I feel like I just learned to be grateful for what you have. You know, we're in such a huge society where it's always complaining about what you don't have.
It just shows you that for some families, like each family, you're meant to do better. My grandparents did good, my parents did good, and I'll do even better.
I do think if you're not like aware of privilege, you should do this exercise, but it's more complicated.
Thank you for watching this video, and really take some time to reflect again on the following 3 questions if you didn't and if you haven't, and we'll go deeper into that. And so now, truth moment. Do you have privilege? Yes or no? How could a person's privilege negatively impact their ability to enhance cultural knowledge, awareness, and skill sets? What would be the consequence of our scholars? What would be the consequence for our scholars and their families if we are challenged to recognize areas where we can improve our knowledge, awareness, and skill sets. Take the time and please personally self-reflect. Again, top of the iceberg is what we think we know. But when it comes to our relationships with our scholars and their families, there's a lot that we don't know. When we think about power, privilege goes back to areas of opportunity for us. And areas of opportunity provide opportunities for power. So we say privilege, but privilege provides opportunities, and opportunities is a form, it's a power that we have. So according to Sylvia Duckworth's Will of Power / Privilege that she drafted in August 19th of 2020, document at least 2 areas of power of privilege that you have at the foundational level. Let's use this time to exercise humility. This will not be shared. This is just your private acknowledgement. The circle includes, at the center of power and or privilege, it includes a homeowner, if you drive a vehicle, Democrat or Republican, if you're in a monogamous marriage, you're a citizen, you're salaried, you're a native English speaker, monogamous heterosexual, in a monogamous heterosexual relationship, cisgender male or man, you're slim and muscular, white, neurotypical, stable economically, able-bodied, Christian, rich, you're an adult, post-secondary school, so you have maybe a post-secondary degree. So these are all the things in the center. Write down all of the areas that really you connect with in this circle. But for the sake of time, you can at least identify 2 areas. Let's take it a step further. Now, you've identified the 2 central areas of power that you have. Now, let's look at the next layer of power and or privilege that you might have. And so, we have this area where the 2 areas that you chose. So, for example, if I chose that I'm a homeowner and that I am in a monogamous heterosexual relationship, the way this works is if I'm a homeowner, right, there's a certain level of privilege and power that I have over a renter. As a homeowner, you have a lot of different choices. You can allow people to live with you. You can rent out your place. You can choose to charge people. If you own the home, and you have people rent your space, you can go up on your rent. You can make the rules, regulations, and set the boundaries. So there's a level of privilege and power that you have over your tenants who are renting from you. If you're in a monogamous or a heterosexual relationship, this says can pass as monogamous heterosexual relationships. So there's certain people, right? But it's more acceptable when you are in a committed relationship. There's a male, there's a man, there's a woman. These relationships are highlighted, they're celebrated. We see them in commercials. And so sometimes there is a level of more privilege than individuals who are not exercising that process. When we look at adults, if you are an adult, right, you have more privilege than a young adult or even an older adult. A lot of times, older adults, now society doesn't see them as valuable as, as adults that are still active, of working age, etc. And if you're a young adult, again, sometimes, you can be minimized or marginalized as not having experience. So you don't have enough experience. Young adults can sometimes be stereotyped and marginalized as that. And the older adults can be marginalized as you're outdated. The experience that you have is outdated. You're not relevant. And so that creates a lot of problems, right? And so hopefully you were able to identify the 2 areas that you connected with and see, based on this wheel of power and or privilege, who you have a level of privilege over. Next, our third round. Now we have all 3. And so Now I'm going to go back to those same two areas. A homeowner has privilege over a renter, and a renter has privilege over someone who resides at a shelter or who is experiencing homelessness. So at least you have a dwelling. You have somewhere to live, where someone who is experiencing homelessness or lives in a shelter does not. So you have privilege over this individual. And going back to a monogamous heterosexual relationship versus those who don't really express in these ways, they have privilege over, it says, visibly homosexual or openly polyamorous. So individuals who express and or there's more of it, that visible presence, because you have people that can pass, right? But there's still a level of privilege over those who express outwardly, and it can be noticeable to other people that you have a level of privilege over them. And so this is just an example of how to use this wheel. And there are tons of areas that were researched by Sylvia Duckworth, but that didn't make this wheel. But the goal is to really have us reflect on the spectrum of power and privilege, and to really look at who has that power, who is being erased, and who's being marginalized. And so there's other areas that were not mentioned that that in this research wanted to be honored. That incarceration is one, if you have a record versus if you don't have a record, number of children that you have, types of children, biological versus adopted versus foster children, and that kind of thing. Your dominant hand being right-handed versus ambidextrous versus left-handed, and then even your HIV status or your health status. All things to consider. As we go through this process, we want to go back to the good vibes only. Pick your vibe. How are you doing regarding the commitment you made to try to remain humble and during this process? It can be very uncomfortable, but we appreciate you maintaining that good vibe. And if so, which one of these quotes now is working for you? So let's prepare. We're going to have a group popcorn share out again. We have a chart, paper, marker. Now we need a new volunteer to scribe for us. And so be prepared to provide a short response to the following questions on humility as we go into this segment. So now, what does it mean to have cultural humility? Not just humility by itself, but what does it mean to have cultural humility? On the chart paper, share your answers, and we will chart them down. Pause the video for more time. Culture, the perception and the reality. Cultural humility says that I'm not the expert, you're the expert when it comes to you, right? How can I teach and tell you more about you? Cultural humility is a lifelong learning process. So will you ever become an expert? No. Cultural humility says that it's a lifelong process. Culture is constantly shifting as human beings evolve, and culture is ever evolving, and so will our process, where we have to constantly learn, unlearn, and relearn. Cultural humility is a subjective set of practices. Why is it subjective? Because really it's linked, we control the culture. Some people say the culture shapes us, or do we shape the culture? Either way, culture is moving. And so as long as it's moving and growing and shifting and changing, humility tells us we have work to do. And so, and again, I love that it says subjective, because culture in one part of your state, the southern part of your state, might be different from the culture in the northern part. Culture in the inner city is very different from culture in the rural areas, right? And so that's why it's subjective and it's different, because there's no one exact approach when you're looking at cultural experiences and expressions and traditions and norms. So then we have cultural competency. Cultural competency, at one point, this was the research. Everyone aspired to be culturally competent or proficient. And it really says that I'm the expert. Oh, I know cultures. I took this class in college, or I grew up in a diverse neighborhood, so I'm an expert. No, you're not an expert. Cultural competency says that, you know what? This is the end product. Once I take all these classes, I learn, I have all these multi-racial, multi-age multi-spiritual friends that, you know what, I have a great circle of people who are going to help me to maintain my expert status. No, cultural competency, it implies that the objective is one set of best practices. And once you learn those best practices, you're good. You can stop learning now. And we know that not to be true. So here we go. We have cultural competence and we have humility. So competence is knowing the background of cultures. The attitude, it's feeling like you know all that there is to know. Wow. That means our assignment is done. Once we learn all we need to learn, then we can stop. That's what competence tells us. Knowing a culture's values, its self-awareness is concrete, it's finite, and a set of facts. It's impartial, okay? Humility tells us that it's about critical self-reflection, constantly in life saying that someone can tell me how they experience me, and you know what? I have to take it into account. Someone may say, yeah, you're biased in this area, and you know what? I'm going to take the time to stop, reflect, and to try to gain understanding. That's humility. Ongoing learning, it's understanding, it's curiosity, it's being vulnerable, humble, knowing that you do not have all of the answers. It's a lifetime commitment. It's love, passion, empathy, equality. It's reducing negative power relationships. All right, so now let's prepare for another quick popcorn exercise. Chart of paper. We're going to go back to that with a marker, a volunteer to scribe, and we're going to ask everyone to stand up so we can popcorn. What does humility look like in action? Yes, what does it look like to live humility out loud? Easier said, but how do we do this? How do we live this out loud? So go ahead and take the time and let's go. Ready, set, go. Start sharing your ideas. How do I live cultural humility out loud? Pause the video as you self-reflect. Now let's hear how an expert in cultural humility, trainer Dr. Juliana Mosley, adjusted after making a big mistake during one of her trainings to help us better understand cultural humility.
Cultural competency suggests that learning is finite, which means I can take a course, I can take a workshop, and learn about a group of people. So you may have someone say, hey, I understand Mexican Americans and their culture. Prior to my teaching in Houston, Texas, I took a cultural diversity workshop. Whereas cultural humility says that learning is infinite. We are lifelong learners who must critically self-evaluate. We must look at who we are, what we believe, and why based on our own experiences. And so I had the opportunity a couple years ago to do a follow-up training to an organization I had worked with previously, actually right here in Westchester. And at these day-long retreats, you know, we normally have food, nice little potluck, everybody brings something. And so there was a gentleman who brought a dish, which I fell in love with. I think I probably had 2 plates. Anyway, so, and what happened, I saw him and I said, hey, did your wife make that dish that she made the last time? Y'all already know, see? He said, my wife didn't make that, I did. And I thought, oh my goodness, how have I slipped into this gender norm? I immediately apologized, and then I used it as a teachable moment for our training session. But this is why it is so important to critically reflect and constantly self-evaluate. Even for me as a trainer, what happened? I was so influenced by social norms that I slipped right into one myself, even when I know what is culturally inappropriate.
Wow. We can learn a lot from this moment. But I love how she said when she recognized it, she operated in self-reflection, she apologized to the gentleman for doing that, and she used it as a teachable moment. Again, humble enough to even admit that she too still has this ongoing work to practice the very thing that she coaches other professionals to operate in. And so we thank Dr. Juliana Mosley for her sharing what cultural humility is, and you can watch the full version of her TED Talk, but it's a very powerful thing. So cultural humility in action. This is an acronym provided by Lisa Bozan that says we need to assess. So just like Dr. Juliana Mosley did, she asked the question, right? She asked the question. She realized, wow, she had an issue, but she apologized and she provided space for that gentleman to share his truth. So we need to operate in humility by asking questions, not making assumptions. Humility is asking questions. Hey, who made the dish that you bring? This is for the second time, right? S says seek self-awareness. And then we reflect. Where am I in my journey? Am I in the knowledge phase? Am I in the skill set phase? Where am I, right? And then the second S is suspend judgment. We want to default on the positive, not make diagnoses and judgments about how we're perceiving something, but really to default on the positive when possible. So we want to suspend judgment. E, we want to express kindness and compassion. Again, people will mess up, right? And so that's almost something that, because we live in an environment where we have that diversity, people from different places, experiences, and backgrounds, we want to express kindness and compassion, specifically when a person is trying to self-correct. And last S is support, right? Support where the person is at the moment. Sometimes people are open to hearing and listening, and sometimes they may not be. Then we have the 5 R's of cultural humility tips. The first R is reflection. It's important to reflect and reflect regularly. The next R is respect. We want to make sure that we respect where a person is, their position, their opinion. They may not agree with you, and that's okay. That's not the goal, but to operate with respect. R, the next R equals regard. Make sure that we regard them and that we acknowledge that their experiences are valid. Their thoughts are valid. And so regard is huge. Without regard, there's no listening, there's no communing, and without any communing, there's no communication. R equals relevance. And so we want to make sure we gain the relevance, make sure we're seeking context as how we're processing things. Try to stretch stretch your mindset so that you're able to even receive their experiences and their background. And the last R is resiliency. We want to make sure that when we get knocked down, when we have an uncomfortable moment, it's okay. We can recover. The relationship can recover. And it's important to make sure that we can recover when we have the relationship slips, misses, and shifts. This quote, Helps Us by M.K. Gandhi, says, true humility means strenuous and constant endeavor entirely directed to the service of humanity. So true humility means the strenuous and constant endeavor entirely directed to the service of humanity. In this profession as educators, we are serving humanity. We're serving the next generation, and the next generation who's going to serve the next generation. And so that humility that we need to have to be ongoing learners, to be actively involved in the recovery work of relationships, operating in that, it really means that we are committed to the entire journey in the process. So we know that there's nothing about us without us is really for us. And so we want to make sure that we always consider our scholars, their families, that children first approach in our organization. We want to make sure we keep that in mind, because that will keep us humble. And as educators, we hope that you are open to cultural humility and that you will be able to self-reflect and demonstrate the following questions. At this point, our mission is complete and successful if you were able to answer the question, how does my identity and or influence my relationships personally and or professionally? What blind spots do I have concerning the culture of others? How familiar are you with the struggle of certain racial groups, of certain marginalized groups, of certain groups with language barriers, of certain groups with certain ability challenges, certain groups because of their spiritual beliefs, because of their sexual expression or identity? Acknowledge your blind spots and become more knowledgeable, become more aware, so that you can live out loud the proper supports that are needed by these marginalized groups and groups that have less privilege than yourself. What does it mean to be culturally competent and proficient? Hopefully you're able to answer that now. And is this a benefit or a barrier? And then you're able to respond to the following. What does it mean to have privilege? How does this impact my work, my mindset, or humility? What is cultural humility? And how do I live it out loud? What will be your lifestyle as you move forward? Our mission is accomplished. The final reflection is to reflect and commit. List one thing that you will start doing, stop doing, and continue doing to demonstrate cultural humility, and why. Pause the video as you continue your reflection process. And finally, to close, hashtag you are amazing and thank you. We hope that you check your vibe, and we hope that you were able to operate in cultural humility as we explore the topic. And we hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your training experience.